Let me ask you this question. How do you lose a country? Not with tanks and not with missiles and not with an invading army crossing the border. You lose your republic when your election system becomes compromised.
The cover-up of this colossal security breach is even more disturbing in light of the additional information showing that China engaged in other election-related activities to undermine my first administration and our 2020 campaign. They did not want, and they just didn't want it. They fought like hell not to have it, Donald Trump, to win, and for good reason.
Yeah, because he's standing in the way. In a primetime address, President Trump releasing a trove of CIA and FBI documents, which he claims proves that the Chinese Communist Party engaged in an influence campaign aimed at making sure that he didn't win in 2020. And then the Department of Homeland Security also revealing that they've already uncovered approximately 250,000 non-citizens on voter rolls, and that's only in 4 states. Joining me now, Senior Legal Fellow for Election Integrity at the Heritage Foundation and former Election Assistance Commissioner Donald Palmer. We're also joined by host of China Insider with David Zhang. David Zhang, thank you guys so much for joining us. David, I want your thoughts. Do you agree with the President of the United States that China meddled in our election? And how were they able to do that?
I do agree. Look, we don't want to select candidates like the CCP does in China. We want to freely elect people to power. And also, I think the way that they're doing this is a long-term planning in the making, right? 2018, as early as it seems to have started, but I believe much earlier. Look, this is crazy because anywhere you look, the CCP has already infiltrated the country. And yet, I heard some news that apparently E-ZPass in New Jersey is now being handed to a Chinese company. And that's very crazy to me. So a lot of these local level election commissions, we need to start looking and investigating to see if there's any ties there to the CCP. And if there are any, it's high time to get rid of those before the midterm starts.
So anything made in China, you're vulnerable, your data, TikTok, you name it. I mean, everything's made in China, right, David?
Exactly. No, 100% sure. And also, you can't really stop it because they sell at such a lower price that many Americans think they're getting something for cheaper, but in reality, they're getting a backdoor right into their homes.
Wow. When it comes to election integrity, that's why President Trump, he's pushing the Save America Act. He says that election security is as important as border security. And if you think about it, Donald, you need an ID. You know this better than I do, that you need an ID for simple things like checking into a hotel, to enter most government buildings, to visit a prison inmate. You need an ID for Olive Garden's never-ending pasta pass. Yet the Democrats, Donald, they say that if they pass the Save America Act, that millions of Democrat voters will be disenfranchised. Is this offensive to minorities, the fact that Democrats claim that they are unable to get IDs and that women won't know as well how to get an ID?
Well, it's really fear-mongering because when you really look at the facts, I mean, in states across the country, ID has been implemented as well as citizenship verification, and it hasn't impacted turnout or minorities or any class of individuals. And so the reality of it is that majorities in opinion polls support voter ID and citizenship verification. And we're talking about whites, blacks, Asians across the board. It really is just a minority of progressives that oppose it. And therefore, the Democratic Party still won't support these common sense measures.
Why do you think they don't support it? And what's wrong with showing an ID? Democrats, the Surround America Act is astounding to me.
Well, I think it's like the victim mentality. The Democrats want to, they want to perpetuate the victim mentality that whatever common sense verification procedures are in place, that's somehow going to suppress or oppress certain persons in society. The problem is that Americans just don't buy it. And so they're really in a corner on this. And this is why the president and the Republicans in Congress really have the high ground on this issue politically. I fundamentally believe it's just a good practice and good procedure. But from a political perspective, it puts the Democrats in a terrible position.
David, the Department of Homeland Security is now reporting, as I mentioned, that 250,000 illegals are on the voter rolls, and that's just in 4 states. They also say that They have dead people on the voter rolls. They've also said that the Chinese Communist Party is producing all of these counterfeit driver's licenses. And again, this is just in 4 states. How widespread do you think this kind of voter fraud, people that shouldn't be on the rolls being there, as well as counterfeit licenses? I remember this big story back in 2019 where Border Patrol confiscated over 3,000 driver's licenses. And of course, they came from China.
A lot of it on the level of producing these are generated by greed, that they're given this order to do so. They don't care where it's going. But on a much macro level, in terms of strategy, look, to usurp the system in the United States that fundamentally gave the country the credibility to stand as the free beacon of the West, you need to undermine its election system. To do so, you really start by chipping away at the fundamental stuff, right? Maybe it could be a county in Georgia. It could be somewhere, a town in the Northwest, wherever the situation may be. They need to start doing this from the ground up. And then by the time you realize it, it's already too late. So this is why you need to elect local officials who are very strong on countering the Chinese Communist Party's invasion of the United States.
You know, Donald, several media outlets did not carry the president's address. Meantime, these same networks, they had no problem going wall to wall when it came to the royal wedding. The same networks had zero issues covering Obama's library opening for hours, I might add, hours wall to wall. Legacy Media and Newsmax, by the way, we covered Joe Biden's national address when he called almost 80 million Americans threats to our nation. Remember this?
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
So, Donald, how dangerous is it when you have a media outlet censoring the president of the United States?
Well, you know, media bias has been with us for decades, and it really is sad. I think that you can just go back to the Biden administration and Kamala Harris's comments and Biden's as well about, you know, the threat of Russia. What you have now is a president who's very transparent, and he's giving it all to the American people. Some of the intelligence community might oppose that. They want to be able to filter that information to the American people. But the president is laying it out straight. And so it really is, incumbent on the Congress to act upon this with the SAVE Act. There really has to be a reaction. The president is not holding this back. But no one in the media complained when the Biden administration demagogued the issue over Russia. But now here we are, and the Chinese have been proven to interfere with our elections. And no one wants to report on it. It really is remarkable, the media bias.
David Zhang, Donald Palmer, thank you both.